Thank you all for being here today. I am Nick Knoke, the Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and also an A55K professional like you all. And I'm looking forward to today's discussion. We have Mike Santos here, Director of Asset Management at City and County of Denver Aviation Department, as well as Mike Bordenaro, Executive Director of the Asset Leadership Network. And I think we're going to start off with Mike Bordenaro today. Or are we talking to Jim first, Mike?
Yeah, let's make Jim a panelist. And while Jim is coming in, I am so sorry that
Not here yet.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just say, Mike and Nick just had a climbing and winter activity discussion. We've got to start a climbing asset management board where these two guys are talking about the best way to maintain the cliffs. And Mike has pulled the pinions that Hillary put in up on El Capitan, and Nick has gone up 1,000-foot cliff with the new path. And anyway, it was a really exciting discussion to get started. And what we're going to be doing today is having our first ALN A55K Professionals discussion. And we're open to having anybody become a panelist once Mike is done giving his perspective. What we're going to do is have Jim Dieter give us a little bit of overview of the ALN and the A55K training. Then I'll provide a little bit of insights on what's coming up this year for the ALN. It's really exciting. And then Mike is going to talk about his experience with the training and what it's meant for him. And then we hope all of you join in the discussion. So Jim, welcome.
Hey, that's good. I was doing a household chore and almost lost track of the time. That's good.
I have done that. So since this is our, what, Jim?
Nothing, go ahead.
Since this is our first ALN A55K Professionals event, it's, I think, appropriate for you to just say a little bit about how ALN started and why you thought training was a good idea for the network to do.
Yeah, sure. So the Asset Leadership Network, or the ALN, started out of the U.S. delegation to ISO 55000. And as the standard was nearing completion, pre-publication, so in 2013, we started thinking that we needed to continue to promote and advocate for asset management in the United States and beyond. And that the US tag wasn't a really good place to do that, because that's sort of like making the sausage. We're kind of like selling the sausage. So we started the ALN. One of our core ideas was not to duplicate what anybody else was doing, that we were a trade association, not a professional association. So organizational members are our prime constituency. But then as we had an opportunity and we started thinking about training in ISO 55000, because in looking and talking to people from around the world, there was a variety of certifications in asset management, even some related to ISO 55000, but there were none that were really focused on training individuals, getting individuals up to speed on the standard and what it was about. There was auditor training, there was, very broad asset management training that mentioned ISO 55000, but nothing specifically on ISO 55000. So we had an opportunity to partner with Andrew James Advisory Group, with Lindsay and Richard Uthavilligan and Mia, or Tia, excuse me. And we went from the idea of having the certification program to having the training, the entire program in place, our approach to it, and the certification test ready to go, the training ready to go, and we were conducting classes. So it was actually closer to 3 or 4 months, I think, actually, Lindsay maybe can bring us up to speed on that. And it's just been really highly successful. The core idea was, I think the best application of the training is when a group does it that's about to embark on an ISO 55000 implementation in their organization, to get everyone in the organization speaking the same language. We all know that how frustrating it can be when you have one idea and somebody else is using the same word to mean something else, which is, we certainly have our issues with that in the asset management community. So to get everybody on the same page, speaking the same language, beyond that, I think it brings great individual value to just people that take it on their own. We've had lots and lots of people do that. And then they can further their knowledge in other areas and broaden it in asset management if that's appropriate for them, and to help bring this information to their organizations.
Excellent. And that came along very quickly, in part because of the ALN Education Committee, which had Rob LeBrant and
Marlene Melamachi.
thank you, and Marcia Campbell. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. The test is worth noting that in almost 200 tests we've given now, we've had one complaint about the test. So that's a pretty good record. And we just refunded that person's money because they weren't happy with it. But everybody else seems to think it's difficult but fair. And I think that's what we were trying for.
Yes.
Success ratio is high, but nobody feels like, oh, I didn't need to take the class, or I didn't need to study to pass this. Nobody feels like that.
Yeah, and we do let people take it over if they don't pass it, and that has had to happen. We have a time frame for that to occur. So everybody here kind of knows that story. So, but thank you, Jim, for getting it on record once again. And a little bit of insight for the A55K professional community is this year is going to be blockbuster for the Asset Leadership Network. Pull up a front row chair and get ready for roundtables every month, in addition to our weekly Thursday at 3. And then there are the summits that we're having. We had a roundtable last night on infrastructure and asset leadership, and it was spectacular. It was chock full, 90 minutes of dense material. There's already been emails circulating around about how to build on what's happening. So you're part of you're at the tip of the sword of a growing interest in what is the new generation of asset management. And we're also going to be having quarterly summits, and we're going to focus on infrastructure for our first quarterly summit on March 15th and 16th. And we'll have on the 17th, we'll have an ALN Thursday at 3 that's highly focused on infrastructure, but the summit's only the 15th and 16th. We don't want to overburden people like we have with our rich content level. We've got to make it more digestible. And one of our new members, Aesthetic, Asset with an IC, Aesthetic, is from Australia, and they're bringing a series of municipal case studies to us. The first one is going to be March 8th, and that is on the city of Greater Geelong, Australia, which has an excellent story on how they have managed their infrastructure to gain significant benefits. And then Ontario, Canada, perhaps, and Topeka, Kansas, some excellent showcase programs that we're going to be having. We've got Hugh Sinclair lined up for Thursday at 3. Those are always good. And we have Mike Santos, who is the director of asset management for Denver Airport, speaking. And then we'd like you to tell us that you want to talk about your asset management success story and share your information about how A55K training has helped you with your success. So please, send in the chat that you want to speak in an upcoming one of the upcoming quarterly programs. And then also, if you would like to participate in a round of discussion after Mike is done talking, send us a notice in the chat. And then when Mike is talking, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can just ask to become a panelist, and you can ask your questions personally when he's finished with his presentation. So Mike Santos was an instant brother from another mother. I think our first phone call was an hour long. So he gets this. He was excited about the training program while he was in the middle of it, and he's completed it now. And so we'll ask Mike to say what you think about the training program. We'll pepper you with questions if you run out of things to say, but I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks, Jim, for this opportunity to join you today. So I'm Mike Santos. I'm the Director of Asset Management at Denver International Airport. Getting into why I decided the training was worthwhile here in a minute, just to give you a little bit of background about me. The airport that we oversee is, we've currently got over 21 million built square feet after the expansion projects that we're now working. Over 60,000 registered assets in our Maximo system. We also run Tri-Riga for our facility condition assessment program. What else? With 60,000 equipment assets, we've got over 1,700 rolling stock assets or fleet assets in the TR module of Maximo. Our IMS system, our inventory management system, is also associated with Maximo. 30,000 plus MRO items. Budget for the airport itself is an $8.3 billion economic engine for the state of Colorado. It is the largest economic contributor to the state. You want to talk passenger flow from an aviation perspective, we're trying to get back to the 57 million, 58 million that we were at before COVID hit. We're getting pretty close now. Our CEO has set forth for the leadership team a 100 million, it's called Vision 100, a 100 million passenger goal within the next 10 years. That's what's driving our expansion. It's what's driving our capital improvement projects. It's what's driving our large scale capital projects. What else? We've got 6 runways currently, building our 7th. We're about to start moving Earth for our 7th runway. Statistically, 53 square miles is the airport. We believe we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 miles of linear assets, not including roads. Roads on the airport alone are over 300 miles. So a fairly significant infrastructure, both from a roads perspective, pavement perspective, facility support equipment perspective, and a real property perspective. Now, why did I think it was valuable to take this training? Well, first of all, I want to give a shout out to the folks over at GoToLearn who turned me on to this training. And he sent me the brochure, and the brochure for this training pretty much speaks for itself. If any of you out there have had any formal asset management training at all, whether it be from this great organization or from IAM or otherwise, you'll see within that brochure where the value is and how this training can not only underpin and support what you already know about asset management, but gives you the language and the tools that you need to convey the importance of strategic asset management to your executive leadership, thereby theoretically and hopefully establishing the sight line that you need to get the executive support that will then fulfill the asset management vision at your organization or your facility. So I've been working asset management in various facets back to 1996 with Johnson Controls. Moved into the federal space after that, not only in Antarctica, but the Arctic as well, in the Arctic program at Thule Air Force Base and at summer camp with various federal contractors. I worked for KBR for a little while. I've been a consultant. I ran my own consultancy as the principal for 3-4 years, consulting to various federal and private clients regarding how to set up their asset management systems and try to convey to their leadership how important oversight of their assets actually is and what benefits asset management as a practice can bring to their organizations as far as efficiency, cost savings, and so on. After that, I joined the airport, joined Denver International, City and County of Denver in August of 2015. Been there ever since. And the airport established that asset management program in 2013. I took it over in 15, and we have been expanding and improving upon our asset management program ever since. Finally, our COO and our CEO have set forth a goal for Denver International to attain ISO 55001 certification. The question remains how and who is going to lead that effort. Should it be me? I think that's still a question. Our airport's a very big place. 13,000 City and County of Denver employees are employed there, performing a myriad of responsibilities, from operations to maintenance. We self-perform our own maintenance, facility maintenance, that is.
So did you take the course?
Organization and so on.
Did you take the course in anticipation of the certification?
Mike, I have to tell you, I took the course selfishly.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
did, and I took the course selfishly. I'm not sure that the chicken came before the egg or not, because shortly after I started the training, my senior vice president mentioned the fact that I was going to be A55K certified to executive leadership in an executive roundtable, and very soon thereafter, our CEO said we should get ISO 55001 certified. That conversation continues.
Excellent. So with your long history in asset management, you must have encountered other training. So you have some perspective on how to compare this to other training. How does it compare?
Certainly. So, and I can compare it. The one comparison I have is I have the IAM certificates. I will, the most specific and succinct way for me to convey the difference between the two trainings is this training by the ALS is very, very focused on the standard. Very focused on not only how to interpret it, but how to affect it, how to explain it to your senior executives, how to convey to them what resources, competence, awareness are required to attain that certification. IAM, I don't want to take any credit away from them. It was a fantastic course. It's graded from this is your introduction to asset management to, you know, here's a little more, here's some elevated information that you can use in your asset management career. The ALS training was very, very specific.
We're not the American Sign Language. It's the Asset Leadership Network.
Yes, sir. What did I say?
ALS, American Sign Language.
Oh, sorry. My bad. I apologize for that. ALN. Yeah, very, very focused on the 55,001 standards, how to convey them to other people. And then what are the requirements within? How can you improve your organization just using the standard and its framework alone?
So could you see if appropriate to get your team that's going for certification to take the training together?
Absolutely. Once that team is formed.
Right.
So it's again, it's the fundamental problem of who do you get together to forward the effort? Who on that team are the subject matter experts to convey the standard and the issues within, and who's got the time to lead them?
Jim has his hand up.
Yeah, I was just, we talked about the training and the certification, but do you have any comments or thoughts about the delivery? Of course, AJAG started out with it as an in-person class. And, that's been impossible the last couple of years, but boy, it seems that they've done a great job of pivoting to, a blended environment. I wondered what your thoughts about that were.
I thought that Lindsay's projection of delivery of the framework, the format, the progression was quite well done. Was very effective. I thought it was on point, provided plenty of opportunity for various individuals in this profession to interject, to provide comment, to provide reinforcement to others that are in the class. I thought it was very well done, very well structured. Probably one of the top 2 virtual trainings I've ever taken. And that is it's a pretty confined group of people.
I think, you mentioned, the interaction with other professionals taking the class, and that's, it's always been a hallmark of the ALN, is those kind of interactions and what can, the information and relationships that can spring from that. And I think we've endeavored, and I think we've succeeded, and certainly you just explained that it exceeded in this class, in replicating as best as possible in a virtual environment, how people can make connections that, are valuable to them and the others, and create something stronger than you started out. So that sounds good.
Moreover, the training itself does an amazing job of promoting the reason for and the mission of the Asset Leadership Network. So I really do think they support each other. Like the training underpins, the standard and the understanding of the standard, which is broad, and also does a great job of explaining to the audience and the participants why participation, membership in, and in dare I call it research of the Asset Leadership Network is also equally as important, because you need a forum to convey your issues, right? Everybody needs, as a professional, to learn from each other. It's not that one approach is the right one. Everybody's got a different view. And Jim, I think you said it best. As asset management professionals, we struggle on a daily basis with other professionals in our orbits using language that is not asset management is not maintenance.
Yeah.
For an example. So it's I think it's very important that is also reinforced, and that we're able to convey that to our colleagues in a constructive manner.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
So Nick has been A55K training, and Nick, will you come on and ask Mike? No, Mike, don't go away. we want to expand the discussion, unless you need to take off, Mike.
Nope, I'm good. I
No, so
didn't
Nick.
want our colleagues watching me blow my nose.
Oh. Thank you very much. So Nick, you've been through this. You heard what Mike had to say. Do you have any questions for him about his experience or how yours relates to what you heard him say?
I appreciated his noting of the communication piece, that, you know, a key part of the course is how to and how to implement the standard is to communicate to the leaders and the decision makers the value that can be drawn from a framework like ISO 55000. So I appreciated that note, that communication piece and getting leadership buy-in is so key to have success. And it sounds like he's managed or somehow there's leadership in his organization that's bought into this idea and sees the value. And that's a huge stepping stone that they've already hurdled. And so I'm excited to hear, as the implementation process gets underway, how that goes and where are the pain points and what are the value, you know, what are the initial values they start to see, and then at years down the road, what values come from it. And then I also heard him say it, something about it being kind of broad. And I have heard in a number of their programs recently, people use the word holistic, not necessarily in the way that I've heard it used at other times and places, but more to say, we're looking at the big picture, the whole, not maximizing or optimizing one siloed activity or one asset class, but seeing the big picture of value to an organization as more than financial, as more than quarterly or yearly. And so I was wondering maybe if he had any more to say on that subject, just because I think that's something that gets missed occasionally.
Mike?
Sorry, Nick, was that for me, sir? Okay.
Yeah.
Very well.
There are two, Mike, sorry.
It's okay. So I want to go back to the first part of your statement where you identify the need for resources, which is what you're alluding to. Luckily, my predecessor was hired along with a group of 5 personnel. The organization, Denver International at the time, put together a dedicated asset management group within what they used to call airport infrastructure and infrastructure management. It's incredibly important for every organization to establish that formal organization. Maybe they're dual-hatted, maybe they're not. I recommend against dual-hatting because I really think you need dedicated resources. I really think the asset base, no matter where you are, no matter whether it's international or local, I think the asset base deserves dedicated, specific individuals to oversee and to improve asset management at those installations or facilities. So going back and reinforcing what you said, absolutely. Dedicated resources are a huge deal. To answer the latter part of your answer, or excuse me, of your statement and question, every organization, no matter what, I'll answer it with a statement first, and then to be specific, every organization, whether you're working in a government environment or working in a private sector environment, has a different interpretation of value, has a different interpretation of what's this going to do for me. In the private sector environment, which I've spent plenty of time in my clients, obviously we're associated with, they want to know, what's it going to do for our bottom line? How is it going to alleviate overhead, for example? How is it going to make our overhead more efficient so they can get more work done so we can make more widgets in a manufacturing environment? How can we provide a higher level of service to our customers? How can we market our organization better so we can compete on a higher level when it comes to proposals, when it comes to competitions, or even as incumbents. When you're working in the municipal, state, or federal environment, the interpretation of value is quite different because they're not profit and loss organizations. In the case of Denver International, we're not an authority. We are a self-sustaining enterprise fund.
Oh,
So they have a completely different vision and value system. What they want to know is, how can asset management reduce our O&M cost and improve the life cycle of the assets identified within our system, so we as an airport can better serve the traveling public and create a better, what we call, traveler experience or passenger experience. How do you convey that as an asset management person? So you have to put it in tangible terms. And those tangible terms are, well, if the performance and reliability metrics on your heating and cooling is meeting your expectations through asset management practice, that is a higher level of passenger experience at the very basic level. But you can expand it to other examples, of course, when it comes to aesthetics, when it comes to FF&E, when it comes to how well the buses run between the parking lots. So you can expand the definition of value in many different ways, depending on the very specific business you're involved in. I hope that answers your question.
It does so much more than answer the question. In the rewrite of ISO 55000, there is quite a tug of war on the value issue, and Nick does the highlights of the videos. We need to make that value statement a highlight and share it with the ISO 55000 TC 251 committee. Anyway, so thank you for that. And then Jim came on, so I suspect he has something to say. No.
you're talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I really loved, Mike, Mike Santos, how you gave a great example of tying asset management to the organizational objectives. It's just so core to the whole thing. Why are we doing it? It's like, well, why are you in business? Why are you an organization? What are you trying to do? And, whether you're a corner restaurant or a international airport, there's strong connections all over the place. Pretty easy to do if you think to do it. And that's a great strategy.
So going back to the training, Mike, was there anything that surprised you? You're very experienced, this, you've been through the IAM training. Was there anything that was, wow, a breakthrough or anything that surprised you?
So thanks for the question. I have a couple of things highlighted actually in the standard, and it's just the thought process I go through, because the highlights that I have in the standard here in a PDF document actually reflect the challenges we have in our own organization. So surprises. How deep does asset management, or how deep is the asset management system going to affect every particular organization that you're working with? So obviously our org chart is massive. How is asset management, the system, and in application of the standard, how is it going to affect every single facet of your business? Some more than others, of course. What really surprised me were some of the shall statements that said everybody's going to be created equal. Everybody's going to sign up. Everybody's going to have a part in its success. So what it really spoke to me was the need for alignment, organizational alignment. And Jim, you mentioned the organizational objectives. In our case, it's our strategic plan. And certainly our SAMP is aligned to that plan. But the surprise is the organization at large has to be aligned and understand why asset management is so important in order to affect the standard and the system. It's really unobtainable in it being certification or even application of the standard in part or in whole is unobtainable if there are silos that won't play ball. You have to, everybody's got to be on board, from finance, from F&A to the back office folks, to the administrative personnel, to maintenance personnel. I mean, on and on and on and on. I mean, we have multiple departments at the airport, of course, and this includes operations. So the operations group of the airport, that's an aviation term. But look at it from a manufacturing term. The production management, they're concerned about numbers. They're concerned about scrap. They're concerned about waste. They're concerned about throughput. They have a role in the applicability of asset management and the application of the standard itself. Absolutely do. Because all of that support equipment that the asset management organization is trying to improve performance and reliability on supports those numbers. That's the tangible connect the dots relationship between the two. So going back to what Mike said, there's an applicability across all different types of organizations. Doesn't matter if you're service-based, doesn't matter if you're manufacturing, doesn't matter if you're government services, doesn't matter if you're boss contracts, doesn't matter if you're an owner, especially if you're an owner, I would say. That was the real light bulb that came on for me was regardless of the type of organization that you're involved with, that sightline has to breed a pushing down effect of we are going to do this. We are going to do this. We are going to make our organization better by doing so. And here are the representatives in each different department that are going to be responsible for, for being a part of it, for participating.
Excellent.
I know it's a long answer, but
no, but that was perfect.
That was my biggest surprise.
I mean, you pass basically. So we're starting to ask other people to join in now, and Jack Kelly is ALN board member, an ALN senior fellow, and was with the Office of Management and Budget in the White House for 36 years. And Jack is also a A55K. He was in the first class with me and Jim and Lindsay and Washington, D.C. government. So thank you, Jack. What did you think of what you've heard so far?
Fantastic. I mean, having a guy with Mike's experience and first his experience in general, but also his specific experience with taking the course and being able to apply it in the setting of the Denver airport is just extraordinary. I mean, that's a kind of, practical application of the training and of asset management that I think people who are just getting started in asset management really are eager to hear about. So I really appreciate Mike spending the time to share all those ideas and thoughts with us.
Yes. What was your experience in the training? What surprised you?
So first of all, I wasn't in the first course. I was in the second course. Right. I had some kind of conflict. What surprised me, I had read the standard numerous times, and I thought and once I got a hold of the IAM 6-block model, I thought, I finally understand this stuff, because when you read the standard is a lot of words, it's a lot of ideas, and it's organized in a way that wasn't intuitive to me in terms of organizing the subject matter. But when you understand that ISO organizes the standards in a way that you can look across a lot of different topics and see the commonalities of a management system approach, I appreciate why ISO chose to do that. But it wasn't, in my first exposure to it, it just wasn't the most easy way for me to comprehend everything the standard had to say. But I was impressed by several things. One, how comprehensive it is, and also how common sense it is. I mean, it's like all these things in my 36 years at OMB, working on reform initiatives, I had learned a lot of those lessons, oftentimes by having made mistakes and learned from my mistakes. But so I was just really struck by how much good stuff the standard had, but it was kind of hard to put it all in my mind. When I took the course, I mean, Lizzie's a great instructor. When I took the course, it was like, now the pieces started coming together. And probably what was the most surprising and powerful concept that I got from the course was finally understanding what a SAMP is all about, a strategic asset management plan. Because I thought, when I first read about the SAMP, my gut says, well, this is just basically a kind of a high-level asset management plan for how you connect assets or groups of assets to organizational objectives. And it's not that at all. The SAMP is actually a roadmap for how you prepare the asset management plans. And it's the way that you make sure that all the different parties in the organization that play a role, whether it's from a legal assessment, whether it's financial, whether it's the leadership, play a role in putting together the asset management plan, so that you make sure you have senior level support, you make sure you have alignment and all those good things that are critical to the standard. So that was the thing that was most powerful. And you might have, I can't remember, we've had so many webinars lately, I'm having a hard time keeping them straight, but this was the one that talked where that company came on and had a guy presenting about a SAMP that they worked with. I can't remember, it was like a week or so ago. It was a company that you referred us to. And it was a good presentation. He had some great, materials, kind of training materials that he presented, some of the international stuff and so forth. But then they asked the question, what did the SAMP look like? And the thing that was missing to me, and I sent the president of the company a note on this, the thing that was missing to me was the SAMP needs to be signed off by all the key people. I mean, and that's something that DOD has done forever. When you've got, one reason it's so hard to get any kind of policy document through DOD is they make doggone sure that all the key people who have to support that decision are involved in signing off on it. And that's the same principle behind a SAMP. And that was new to me. I mean, that was a powerful takeaway for me from the course. Excellent.
So I've had the privilege, thank you, Jack. I've had the privilege of talking with Mike in the past, and the demands of the Denver airport are vast and many, and he has to run away sometimes. So I don't know if maybe you were ending, but Ed Safety had a question for you. Ed, yeah, there you go.
Hi, Mike. First, I'll say Jack touched upon my favorite part of the training, which was building an example SAMP. It forces you to get down to every element and all the stakeholders. So I'll just say that succinctly. Mike, my question for you goes back to the beginning when the airport was built some 25 years ago. I remember that the Secretary of Transportation and the administration took a lot of heat because the exclamation point was, this is way too big. We don't need this. And now I'm listening to you talk about the success in asset management and the expansion. Can you tell us how that transition occurred? I'm really interested to hear.
So first, let me say thanks, Jack. I appreciate your kind comments. It's very nice of you. Yeah, nice to meet you. First of all, Lindsay's going to be giggling in the background because I alluded to this very same topic during our training course. It's called the pain index. So every organization goes through a process by which they determine they need asset management to solve a problem. So the airport, as you alluded to, built in 95. Everybody said it was too big. Everybody said it was too far away. Everybody said, we're never going to grow into this. Well, the Denver area, just relatively speaking, has grown by over 200 million people since.
Not 200 million, 200,000. You said 200 million.
No, sorry, 2.2 million.
2.2 million.
2.2 million. Sorry, I said 200, but 2.2 million since that period of time. The airport went about the decision-making process to create asset management through the pain index. And the pain index is when infrastructure begins to catastrophically fail, when equipment begins to catastrophically fail, when building systems and subsystems begin to catastrophically fail in a manner that affects their business directly. They look inward and say, why did this happen? The answer is typically because we didn't see it coming. The next question is, who's supposed to see it coming? The answer to that question is typically an asset management organization that oversees, measures, and creates actionable business intelligence to forecast life cycle replacement and the life cycle of the real property itself. Somebody has to be, some honest broker in the organization has to be able to tell executive leadership without agenda, these systems are nearing the end of their lifespan. And here's the proof. Asset management organizations, specifically like the asset management organization that was initially set up at DEN and that I have expanded since 2015, is designed and empowered, and our mission is to create that mission, to create that business intelligence. That business intelligence is then used in an actionable way to create what we call business plans or justifications, business justifications to improve the infrastructure. And then of course it's the why. Why? Why has it failed suddenly? Is it failing now? Is the rest of it failing? Is the whole thing broken? Well, given the right amount of data, we can answer that as well. So I hope that answers your question, Ed. It's a process by which it's a need-based process. Okay. Leadership determines the need of being able to rate, oversee, dare I use the word surveil, an installation or a campus, as we tend to call it here at the airport. And they put somebody in charge to do that. And one last very specific and critical comment is asset management organizations cannot work solely for those performing the maintenance, distributing the money, or operating the facility. They have to report directly to the entity in the org chart that has the ability to affect decisions upon all those platforms. That way, the message is not distorted in any way, shape, or form on its way to the COO, or excuse me, on the way to CEO in this case.
We would like
Does that
to,
help, Ed? I hope.
Ed, you're on mute.
Apologies. I didn't want to make noise while Mike was speaking. It fully answers my question, and it was evidence-based decision-making, and that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And we want to make legislation out of what you just said there. And we should write that and chisel that into stone in terms of how it's can't be for, yeah. Lindsay has helped me understand a way to distinguish asset management from asset management. And engineers were the owners of managing assets. And so they think they own asset management. But asset management is really for managers, for people who don't touch assets.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Mike,
how?
oh,
Please
excuse
go.
me, Mike. Can I just offer a reciprocal thought to that? In my experience, I have also met asset managers who thought they were managing the assets.
Micromanagers. Yes.
Yeah, so we do have to be careful and cognizant of both sides.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And if anybody who's in attendance wants to join in the conversation, please just send a note and we'll make you a panelist. Mike, how big is your team now? You said it was 5 people when they started the asset management department.
Yeah, so now it's 20 full-time personnel, plus 4 interns. And those 4 interns are split between winter and summer. So 2 interns in the summer, 2 interns in the winter.
Where do you get your interns?
From the general public. Yeah, we put it out there like any other. It's a city and county of Denver requirement, because it's a paid position. Believe it or not, it's a paid internship. So
good.
We put it on the street like any other position that's open.
Excellent. Jim, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it's long, I didn't want to, this could be a longer answer. Didn't want to interrupt the previous discussion. But one of the things that fascinates me is the scope of asset management systems. We have a standard that we've worked on, is now an ASTM standard on an asset management taxonomy that really covers the breadth of assets, from the natural assets, the land and water you start with, the air, and goes into the intangible assets of systems and knowledge and various sorts. And people tend to, when we ask them what's in their asset management system, they tend to say everything. And I always smile because nobody is doing everything. So you have any thoughts on that? What's in the scope of your system now? And is that going to expand, or is it everything?
Oh, it's not everything. It's not. We have the challenge. I mentioned silos in the past. I mean, we have the challenges of fiefdoms and kingdoms like everybody else does. Yeah. So the direct answer to your question is facility support equipment, real property, rolling stock, and a smattering of other cats and dogs that some do, some don't belong in there. There are personnel at the airport that think of trash cans an asset. No, it's an inventory item. But and some folks in God bless them. Jack mentioned the DoD. If you talk to a supply sergeant at any one of these Army bases anywhere in the world, they will tell you everything in that warehouse behind them is an asset, right down to the nuts and the bolts. They are assets. So, great segue, Jim. Your organization has to make a determination on what you're going to call an asset. Define what an asset is.
Yep.
Is it accountable property? Is it capital property? Is it real property, installed equipment? What is it? Is inventory an asset? If it is, what's carrying cost, value, and so on? We all understand the supply chain terms, but what are we going to call an asset? So therefore, when we create this asset management organization, what are they going to measure? What are they going to oversee? What are they going to affect? What are they going to influence? Who are they going to influence? So the answer is no, not everything. Our IT group on tangible and intangible, they have their own asset management system.
Yeah.
It is, it uses a completely different ISO standard. Well, that's a bit of a stretch, but they use a different standard. I'll just say that. You talk to environmental folks, their 14,001 stuff, they use a different standard. And they believe that some of the support assets, mechanical assets in their world aren't applicable to the rest of the asset management strategy. So, there's a lot of ambassadorship, a lot of advocating, a lot of external communication that an asset manager has to invoke in order to, again, affect the system. Because not everybody in the organization seems to understand that those folks over there, and who they're talking about is asset management, those folks over there, they want to rule the world. No, we don't, actually. We just want to ensure that the owners and the stewards have a complete picture on how well those assets are performing and how reliable they are.
You mentioned the traveler or passenger experience. I used to work for Sunflower Systems, and one of our customers was TSA. So every piece of TSA equipment in every airport in the United States and beyond, was in the Sunflower software. And it's like, well, it's hard to think about the passenger experience at an airport without thinking about TSA and their assets. But, how can you work that? How do you roll that into the overall experience from an asset management perspective? It's an interesting challenge.
Mike, I'd like to introduce you to Cecilia Mowat. She's the president of Strategies and Site, and she was in the A55 professionals class with Nick and with our board member Mildred Chua. Turns out that was a real good class.
Nice to meet you, ma'am.
Oh, I'm not that old. Don't be mamming me. Thank you. Are you from the South? Wait a minute.
No, I'm the son of a retired lieutenant colonel.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You've been well trained. Well, thank you so much for sharing your personal experience and your professional one. You are so well spoken as to the value of this course. And my experience, for me, it was an aha or a grab on to something similar to what you said, the surprise of everybody has to be involved, because I do diversity, equity, and inclusion work as well, and have a background as an asset manager with companies on the real estate side, on the commercial and corporate real estate side. And so I always thought that everybody has to be involved. And what I loved about ISO 55000 was 4.2, involve all relevant stakeholders. Nick knows that I will jump all over that. And while you said that a garbage can is not an asset, in that airport, to the customer experience, if the garbage can is overflowing or not available or not where I can find it, you have a problem. And so what is the mission of the organization? So for me, everything, I am the type that will take it all in and make everything relevant and everything responsive to the need to be managed. But I'm not the one who has to manage it. It has to be, you said it earlier, everybody in the organization is going to have to believe it, understand it, and it's got to come from leadership down. And then it will bubble back up from the troops, because the troops really know what's going on, what the processes and procedures are, and what possible innovations there are. So I was wondering if you have done any processes you mentioned all the tangible assets. And I did have a question about your external tenants, if you manage that process too, as part of your bailiwick, because that's a big one and an income generator, I'm sure. So that was a question, and I'm just wondering if you do processes as well, Mike.
Yes, ma'am. So let me try to address and write this down real quick so I make sure I don't lose track.
Of my 5 questions.
Well, no, I think there's a good 3 there though.
No, that's right. I was just being facetious.
And then process. Okay, so I love your trash can analogy. It's awesome.
You
I
raised
really
it,
do.
and I had
No.
to jump to it.
No, but truthfully told, just because the trash can by itself is not an asset doesn't mean it's not important. Doesn't mean it's not part of a broader system
That's right.
that should be important to somebody. In our case, it's our contract maintenance management folks. So they, we have a janitorial contract, and you're right. If nobody cares about the trash can until it's overflowing and nobody can use it, and it's making a mess, and it's unsightly, and it's aesthetically unpleasing, and it stinks, and all those things. Of course, it's part of a broader system. So I think one of the hallmarks of effective asset management is being able to compartmentalize FF&E into manageable chunks
Mm-hmm.
that you can then assign, practically assign to individuals to manage, and then the broader staff that actually does the hands-on work.
Right.
But you can't, you may have to focus on one particular trash can one day because that one seems to get full faster than the rest of them do. Now you have continuous improvement opportunities. And now does it just need a bigger trash can? Do we need more? So add to the system, great, to provide that customer service.
Yeah, so what I was going to suggest is that as you are looking at the certification process, since your CEO is the one who suggested it, it does need to be that, you'll start with you and your aegis of what you've got to deal with, but there should be a message being sent to everyone that ultimately this organization is going to include everyone, because that is true inclusion. Everyone ought to be involved in the assets that are under their umbrella.
Absolutely. I couldn't
Whatever
agree with
they
you
do to
more.
bring value, whatever they
Absolutely.
do. Yeah, one of the things that I gained from taking the class and becoming involved with ALN is the joy of working on our advancing equity with asset leadership. And, this goes into management in a company needs to tap into the resources that they have. And the resources are the relationships internally and externally of the people that do the work and the people that they do the work for. So I think, I don't know if you've looked at that issue at all, the people part, the external as well as the internal stakeholders. What
Sure.
ahas have you had from that?
So what you're describing is the antithesis of true engagement. And of course, we've looked. Going back to your real estate question and your question about process, I have to admit, the airport during its existence has not been as mature as it has needed to be when it comes to including tenants, leaseholders, and other property. You can't own property on the airport. The city and county never owns it. It may revert to us in 10 years, or in 20 years, but we haven't been as mature as we should have been during that first 23 years of existence at the airport. It wasn't a real focus in 2013 because you just couldn't eat the elephant at once. During the standing up of an asset management program, that the world is huge. As we are now moving towards affecting many of the pathways that we identified in our SAMP creation, and then our SAMP publication in 2018, real estate is much more involved than it was in the past. Not only from the stewardship perspective, which is really where we're coming from as a Seneca County entity, but from an ownership's perspective, and in trying to convey that in a very equitable way to the tenants of saying, okay, here's the contract, here's your Schedule E. Our Schedule E is who maintains what, and then creating a process by which we, the airport, can fairly assess the condition of that facility. Now I'm looking at it through the asset management lens, so forgive me. So how we can fairly assess in a very equitable way the maintenance and the condition of that facility that tenant is in, and then equitably repair all the defects that we find during that process. My organization runs an $8 million FCA program through a third party that does those inspections, gives us those defects, writes those reports, creates those estimates. And then I hand it off to real estate as part of an external process, actually, to our group, so they can therefore affect, in an equitable way, the rectification of those defects and those problems that we find. And what we find at this airport is that it creates so much. It creates a much more significant and solid partnership in relationship with those tenants, because not only through the engagement of discovery, but through the process of resolving some of all these problems that they've been having but they wouldn't talk about or didn't want to talk about, we find that the relationships with those tenants become much stronger, and therefore we now have the opportunity to engage with them and increase the amount of lease time. So, it's basic customer service, but not everybody really understands that. And but it's also doing it in a way that's honorable to the stewardship mission that people like me have at this airport.
That's right, because those tenants, once they vacate, that's coming back to you. Better to take care of it beforehand. So yeah.
Certainly. The process has not been easy, because there's trust and credibility that has to be built first. And we've all been through this where tenants or external customers are out of sight, out of mind, because they're either not complaining or they don't have any problems, right? So those are the folks that are really, I think, critical to engage with first, is because, oh, you know what, we haven't heard from the car rental agency in a while. We should probably go have a look at that building, or we should probably go have a conversation with them to find out what their problems are,
right?
What their issues are with the facility, and let's document that, and then we'll make a determination on who owns what and how we're going to help them improve their customers' experience.
That's right.
That benefits everybody. That really, to me, is the antithesis of engagement and the EDI concepts that you talk about.
This has been just spectacular. This is better than what I was hoping for. This is like a discussion among classmates after class.
I like it.
It was a good class, and we have Lindsay to thank for that, as well as Ajax, because it was well put together. I really did appreciate that course, and the forcing of formalizing your reflections was one of my favorite parts. And Nick is on, and I loved having Nick in the class, because you saw his mindset, and it's great to have the diversity of thought and perspective shared that way.
Yes. And Mike, like Cecilia said when she first came on, thank you for your thoughtfulness to this whole approach. We need to get you more involved. You said you'd be involved in an aviation or airport asset leadership board. We're going to have to set that up, but not just for, that specific category. Your tone, your professionalism, your comprehensiveness, all leaders need to hear your perspective.
you.
So we're going to
Very nice.
work on something with you for sure.
I look forward
So
to it.
thank you. Thanks, Jim, for kicking things off. Nick has some childcare issues. He had to go, but thank you, Nick. Jack and Ed, thanks for jumping in. And for all the other attendees, thank you for coming and participating in this first of what will be quarterly programs. And I look forward to having more of these after class discussions.
Let's
So
make
I
sure to
can
thank,
stay
let's make sure.
if you'd like.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Jim.
I just wanted to jump in and say we want to make sure we thank AJAG and Lindsay, have been, have done a great job with this program.
Yes, and I tried to get Lindsay to say she would be willing to come on, but she didn't want to. So that's okay. She doesn't have to.
That's
Nobody-
okay. She's present with us because we have her in our minds and in our vision for what we're learning from her. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we carry your flag, Lindsay. So thank you for that, even when you don't hear from us. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you soon for our Equity Council Board meeting.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you, Mike, so much. It was such a
Yes.
My pleasure. Thank you. Mike, I can stay for a few minutes. I think there's some other questions in the chat that I could probably hit the tops of real quick.
Oh, okay. I wanted to, I was given an exit because I did not want to take too much of your time. If you've got more time, then
I'm good.
let's.
I'm good till 2:30 my time.
Okay. So there weren't, all right. So Cecilia, you had a question early on that we didn't quite get to. I'm trying to find it.
I think we may have. I think that Mike answered it in part. I was asking how he had broken down the categories of airports assets. And Jim
tenants.
asked that question, and then I did ask the rest of the question if there was a SAMP for the tenants or third-party spaces. As a former director of excess property for McDonald's, Mike, you need to know what is in your excess space. So I was glad
Agreed.
that you are dealing with that. I was trying to see what other questions we missed.
No, that was the one
I-
that I thought.
I can't answer that question directly. However, I mean, you have to pick a system of identification. Pick your taxonomy, your vernacular. In our case, since all of our assets are onboarded using building information modeling, which is the maturity level that we've achieved. Everything comes in to our asset registry through BIM.
Wow.
Through the DFI group that works for me.
So what's DFI?
Digital Facilities and Infrastructure.
Okay.
So they run our building information modeling. We like to call it building information management because it's a fifth dimension, really, beyond just drawings and attributes. It is. Yep, it's what's next. I mean, it's warranty information, it's lifespan, it's all those things. To be specific, we utilize Uniformat 2 to categorize and identify and classify assets. And that is in the CMMS world. Sorry about the acronym soup. It's the computerized maintenance management systems that we use and our Revit systems. So so from a visual perspective and from a asset tracking perspective, non-property function, don't want to get it confused with property, but yeah, we use Uniformat 2. Now, city and county and Denver procurement, they still use UNSPSC. However, UNSPSC is not nearly detailed enough to be able to identify specific hierarchies of components and equipment in a facility environment.
One of our patron members, Onuma Systems, is a advanced in that, and they use the actual 3D digital twins as their dashboard and can turn things red in real time if it's hooked up. I don't know, do you have it to that level?
We're really, really close. That's what TriRiga is for. TriRiga is our facility condition assessment, visualization, and data capture platform.
Mm.
And it's supposed to, well, it's spitting out a facility condition index. And what we're doing currently, it's in a beta version. We're currently working to transfer the information from TriRiga, as far as FCI goes, to the real property, specific by location, and then drill down as far as equipment condition index.
Yes.
That's the real trick, is that you can get the FCI on the building, turn the whole building red if you want. But that doesn't tell an executive what's wrong. And it's not focused enough to tell, let's say, a facility management organization or a maintenance organization, okay, guys, great, it's red. Why? What's wrong with it? What systems are screwed up? What systems need help? What pieces of equipment have a greater effect on the rating of this building than the other systems? And of course, that takes PFMEA and control plans and criticality and MDI and all the other studies and determinations that go with that. But I want to make sure that the audience understands that the visualization systems that you use, it doesn't matter whether it's GIS, because we use GIS to a certain extent as well, or a BIM-based visualization system. It has to be backed up by data that's repeatable, verifiable, and auditable. And that's always a challenge for every organization. It's a challenge for mine too. So you have to create the what I call the chain of custody.
Yes.
When it comes to data. And then when it finally gets to that final point, that's what you give the executive. So you can answer all the questions in between.
So speaking of that chain of custody, who can touch that data? Who has access to it, and how is it being utilized? Is it being utilized like through legal to do contracts and things like that? Is it being utilized the way we always envisioned it back in the day? Mike was very involved with BIM storms and the like, and it pulled me in many moons ago. And so I always envisioned the involvement of that as a tool for everyone. What access do you provide?
So the answer to your question is the data has to be reposed in a platform that cannot be contaminated by other organizations, okay, without pointing fingers at folks. Somebody has to own it. There has to be governance. My organization governs that the intake of that data, the reposition of that data, and the dissemination of that data. The answer to the latter part of your question is yes and no. And Lindsay's going to giggle again. Sorry, Lindsay, but there are always going to be, I'll call them elements of your organization that don't want bad news. So you have elements of your organization that are there to solve problems. You have elements of your organization that are there to affect different strategic goals. And there are facets of those organizations that are willing to look at the data. Maybe they just look at it once and they go, oh, yikes. Okay, never mind, moving on. And then there are facets of the organization goes, okay, that's an opportunity. Okay, the news is not awesome, but what's the recovery plan look like? How much? Okay, what's it going to cost to make it better? Or how many people is it going to take? Or who's it affecting? Does this have a reverberating effect on the rest of our customers, whether it's the traveling public, or whether it's the tenant, or our own employees? So if you find a receptive audience that is willing to look at the data holistically and say, look, folks, it's not bad. By and large, we're in really good shape, but we have some issues like every installation does, that we should be paying attention to. And find an advocate that will support your cause, and give them the data, let them visualize it, and say, with this investment, we can be here in this period of time. Here's the level of effort. Here's the amount of money. Here are the people involved in the organization. You know, we would love to say, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, but I think that's a fairly short-sighted phrase. It's more than that. It is, bring me a vision. I understand we have problems, but bring me a vision.
Another approach to Cecilia's question is, I know from the Onuma system and my work with Kimon Onuma, everybody can say the garbage can is over full. So, you know, the system can be set up that anybody can take a picture and say there's a problem at this GIS location, but they can't order more garbage cans. I mean, so there's ways of containing engaging all relevant stakeholders by making it easy for them to say, hey, clean up on aisle 7.
That's right. What's that process look like? Who owns it? Then who owns the, how do we make sure that doesn't happen again?
Yeah,
So I mean, that's the continuous improvement cycle, right?
that's right.
So I got one that's maybe related to that a little bit. Was wondering if you had what you could share about your experience the airport dealing with COVID times and reduced, passengers. How did it, was there an impact of that on asset management, or asset management on how the airport was able to deal with that?
So being an enterprise fund, yeah, the reduction in passengers, especially in 2020, had a very significant effect. I mean, it's just the intake of revenue. And that's from concessions, that's from landing fees, that's from enplanements, that's from all of our revenue streams, all of them. Literally an 80% vaporization overnight.
Sheesh.
No kidding. Did it have an effect on asset management holistically? Certainly, because it had a direct effect on the amount of investment we could put in the infrastructure. A lot of projects went on hold. A lot of projects got stopped midstream. There were many life cycle replacements that had to be pushed to the back burner. I mean, the whole project portfolio was turned on its head overnight. Mercifully and thankfully, and this is credit to Mayor Hancock and others in the city sphere. Mercifully so, we did not have to lay off personnel.
Oh, that's cool.
We and I say we, it wasn't really me, but the airport and the city and county of Denver at large. And this, again, the credit goes to Mayor Hancock and his administration, found a way, as far as personnel are concerned, to simply allow the attrition that was occurring during, let's say, that 2-year snapshot between January of 2020 and present day, to alleviate the burden on the payroll, to put it simply. So, but yeah, there absolutely there was an effect on infrastructure projects and on the speed by which we could make those improvements. We are back up and running 100% now, plus some.
Wow.
If you haven't seen the news lately, and the city council just allowed us to issue $1.3 billion more in municipal bonds in order to complete phase 3 of the Great Hall project.
Great.
So we're back up to the 55 million a year passenger flow. That's within 4%, 5% of where we were at the end of 19. So the future looks very bright, and moving towards our Phil Washington's Vision 100, and then supporting is EDI programs, of course, and then the 4 pillars of our organization that include taking care of what we have, being one of the pillars. The asset management guy loves that. In support of those things, we are back on our feet. I would say that we are hitting a mid-stride, about to start running flat out again. I mean, we are. My organization has never stopped running flat out. We've always got a backlog. I mean, we've got construction projects that went substantial completion in 2018 that we're still integrating into our master models. And we've had to manually put those assets into Maximal because we can't, we're undersized. What can I say?
How many people do you have on your team?
25. And
I have 20 full-time personnel, and I have 4 interns.
That's great. You said that. I did hear it.
well, if there's anything the Asset Leadership Network can do to support you, if you need to make a presentation on why this is important or anything, we're happy to help you with an executive briefing. Or if you want your interns to get some exposure to asset management, we can do something for your interns, whatever, we really appreciate your support, and we want to support you too.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. We should talk offline. We've got some consultants in the building now that are doing something.
Excellent. Maybe they should become members so that they have a platform.
Don't ask me to define what something is. But
yeah, maybe they should become members so they have a platform to talk about the wonderful work they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk offline.
We'll talk offline, I think, Miguel.
All right. Well, Mike, I have been enjoying the web world. I haven't had to travel or anything, but when I can, I want to have a beer with you. You will be a fun guy to just sit around and talk with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your offices are you at the airport most often, or are you working remote too?
So since the advent of COVID, which is, well, let's say March of 2020, when we calmly headed for the exits, we're an international airport, so the risk, the risk factor where we're at's a little higher than just going to the grocery store every day. But to answer your question directly, my group is currently 90% remote. We have site walks we have to do. We have model checks we have to do in person. We have on-site work. We have discovery and onboarding and tagging and so on that my organization my staff is responsible for. So there are specific on-site responsibilities that we have. But by and large, we can and have created the systems, the processes, and the procedures that we need to affect most of our work remotely.
That's great.
We were set up for that as a contingency before COVID ever happened.
Oh, good.
Really?
It was part of it was part of a contingency planning exercise that we went through in 18 and 19.
The business
and so we set ourselves up in a way where we bought the hardware and did everything we needed to do that. So,
sure, because you get snowed in.
That happens to us as well. And there are many of my personnel on the staff that actually work on those snow crews, including yours truly.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah, I was one of the tarmac supervisors running one of our subcontractors to clear the ramps. So yeah, I'm out on the airfield occasionally during snowstorms. Just kind of depends on how big it gets now.
I love your hands-on asset management.
Yes. Cecilia, would you like to wrap up the program?
We go.
Oh, okay. Because I always steal it. Now you're giving it to me and I didn't steal it from you. Well, I just want to thank you, Mike, for having shared what you learned through becoming an A55K professional. because you are a professional on your own, you can tell from your demeanor, your speaking style, your insights, and your experience. But the fact that you embraced this certification and this standard so much and did it for your own good as well as your employer's good is a phenomenal thing. The fact that you recognize that everyone has a role and responsibility, but yet we can't be all things to everyone. They are going to have to step up to the plate and we'll have to work with them. That's fabulous. So thank you so much. We wish you luck. I'm glad to be part of your, I don't want to call it a fraternity. What do we call this? Well, our class. Well, an alum, a fellow alum of the AJAG program.
I like
And
it.
we're thankful for the AJAG program. We're thankful for ISO 55000 as a standard that's out there that can be utilized in so many ways. And thank you, Mike Santos, for sharing how Denver Airport is using it and how you've enjoyed it. And
Well,
thanks,
thank you very much. It's very nice of you to say.
Jim, for letting me be involved, and Nick for always taking us through. And also, Gung Hai Fat Choi, because it's Lunar New Year. So happy New Year, time to begin again. And it's also the beginning of Black History Month. So happy Black History Month.
Cool.
Take some time to reflect on what African Americans have meant to America. As an American, we all need to know that. And take some time to celebrate the New Year for Asian Lunar New Year.
Yes, ma'am.
Celebrate. Ciao.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
See you. Ciao, ciao.
Have a great day.